So the internet, or at least the version of the internet which I experience, has exploded with Occupy Wall Street. And I put up on my channel page a box asking for comment or for topic suggestions from the viewers. And somebody asked what was my opinion on Occupy Wall Street. Now, I've been talking a lot about this on Tumblr, or at least I was back when this sort of hit critical mass a couple weeks ago now, really. But there's a lot that I could say, and right now I don't have the time that I would like to explore the issues. I would like to create more polished videos using graphics and research to explore these problems and issues, but right now all of my time is diverted to doing similar sorts of things for school and other projects that I'm working on, things going on in my actual own real world. But I guess it's hard for me to know how to state an opinion that is going to make an impact on the audience and get across my point of view without just glossing over the issues and upsetting the audience at my seemed callousness. But I suppose that as I look at the demographics of a lot of people who are protesting, they are on, I guess what you would say, the lower end of my generation. So I'm 27 towards, the higher end of what some person's arbitrary idea of what my quote unquote generation is. And these seem, on the whole, I mean, there's all sorts of people at Occupy Wall Street, but on the whole, it seems like they are more towards their late teens, early 20s. And I kind of feel like it's one of those things where there's a lot of indignation about things that people are rightfully upset about, but I feel that Occupy Wall Street and the ideas behind this protesting and all that comes with it is sort of a byproduct of the internet age. In the 60s, or in the generation of probably the most of the parents of Occupy Wall Street, so I'll say my parents' generation, a lot of the same stuff was tried. They had Occupy the Pentagon, Occupy Kent State, Occupy Grant Park, and if you look back at some of these events, there's a lot of parallels, and people are still complaining about the same things, which I suppose leads me to the bigger thing is that it sort of baffles me exactly why it is happening right now, rather than, at some other point in the past, because people are complaining about the bailouts, for example. Well, the bailouts were, 2-3 years ago now? Now, it's not that they stopped being a problem. It's not okay what happened. But the sort of the boiling over contempt for the system has peaked for a certain demographic who have finally come of age and realized sort of the nature of the game, so to speak. And being 27 years old, in my life, I have worked at a factory. That was my first job, and a machine that was supposed to sort screws broke down. And so my first job consisted of sitting at a bench and sorting screws with a rasp. I lasted 8 days before I just quit that job because it was so incredibly monotonous, and I got paid $8 an hour, I believe. I've also worked at a retail store, for a few months period, and then I moved, and then I started working at a regional grocery chain in the food service department of the grocery store, working with the rotisserie, and I think I got paid like $6.25 an hour there. And then let's just say after that I went to work for a major retailer, mostly because they offered full time, and I was working the night shift and getting paid $7.25. It eventually went up with raises and stuff like that. And I've also worked in agriculture, let's put it that way, and in construction, and in a privately run restaurant. And so I've experienced a pretty wide range, or pretty much a fair amount of the range of typical low-wage work in America. And I feel like the problems with these jobs stem back 150 years or more. I mean, depending on the way you look at it. And so, having been through the whole, I'm completely disgruntled with my options in life, and the working world sucks. Having already lived through that at this point in my life, seeing a bunch of younger kids come out and be like, protest. It was like, where have you been? Like, the banking industry, the government, the this, the that. It's like, well, all of that's true, but welcome. You've finally woken up to the last 150 years of history. And even beyond those issues, I think that given the fact that most of my audience is non-believers, or even if they are some sort of religious believer watching this video, I'm almost certain that they do not believe that the pharaohs of Egypt were gods. And yet, just stop and contemplate the pyramids for a moment. You essentially have a dynasty, a family of people who were ruling elites who convinced the masses to build them massive monuments for their graves, and to mummify them, to worship them, to do all these things. And the 1% that everybody has been complaining about has been around since the dawn of civilization. And if we're serious about confronting these problems, I mean, there's the political activist level of trying to come up with ways to engage in the current political process and make a meaningful change, and all of that is important. But I think behind that is that human nature has to be confronted, and I think that cuts across the board, because everybody is against the pharaohs, everybody is against the 1%. But in my life, I have seen the problem with the 99%. Working at a private restaurant, I have seen the utter waste that people who do enjoy a middle-class lifestyle do. I mean, like, having to wash dishes, for example, for people who half the dishes are from chip bowls, which are given away just so that they'll have something to munch on as they sit there waiting for their food that costs, like $15, $20 a plate. Then they fill up on the chips and the chip bowls that have to be washed, even though the store is giving those away. And then they don't even eat half their food, and then that gets thrown away. And then, you really see the problem with people at large when you have a job where you have to carry out 100 pounds or so of waste, of food waste every single day. That's probably a conservative estimate of how much food in just a single private restaurant gets thrown away a day. People are concerned about wars in the Middle East because of gas, and gas prices, and wars for oil and these sorts of things. But having lived in suburban Chicago, I have seen the people who base their entire lifestyle on commuting. You have gridlock traffic because a bunch of people want to work in the city, but they don't want to live in the city because, oh no, there's too many scary minorities in the city. So they go and drive home an hour or two in their SUV to their nice little McMansion in Naperville or wherever, insert whatever town in suburban Chicago. They drive a vehicle that is wasteful on gas. The entire infrastructure of suburbia is based on the idea of cheap gas, but gas being a commodity is subject to supply and demand. So as more people start using more and more gas, the price goes up. So the only way to drive the gas prices down is to stop using gas. We have a society dependent on these things, and then we can't understand why there would be certain people who would be shrewd enough to say, protect our national interests by force. Even George Bush was willing to say America is a nation dependent on oil, or addicted to oil is the word he used. And we should listen to George Bush that time and that time only, because the guy was a cokehead and an alcoholic. And if there's one time we should listen to George Bush is when he says, like, America, you got an addiction problem. We are a country addicted to buying cheap consumer products because we want to keep up with the Joneses, and yet we also have a large number of people complaining about jobs going overseas. Well, the reason that manufacturing jobs are going overseas is that the companies can sell their products to middle America cheaper by cutting labor costs. It makes perfect capitalist sense why they would do it. And you may say, well, they just hate Americans and want to fire them. But in reality, it's the structure of this system which not only encourages people to sell things for as little as possible, but encourages the people to consume anything and everything. And simply walk into a store in America, most of the stuff you see is worthless crap. You don't actually need it for your day-to-day life or for your survival. It's ornamental, it's clever, it's kitschy, it's, just so much human endeavor is wasted creating products that we don't actually need. So much money is spent chasing products that we don't actually need. We have all these vegans on YouTube enraged about animal rights and animal cruelty. Well, again, a lot of that has to go back to the issues of mass consumption and mass production of meat products and what happens when you subject something like food preparation to a mass-produced, widely distributed process. The only way they can get it from point A to point B 3,000 miles away is to chock it full of preservatives. Or the only way that they can make this mass-produced frozen chicken package at a cost that consumers can afford or will, compete with the next guy is with government subsidies and large factory farms that confine their chickens and just treat them like objects rather than living animals and that sort of thing. All of this is a byproduct of a consumer-based society based on convenience and the constant expectation of more. Everybody complains about the subprime mortgage thing, but even though there were unscrupulous banks, it took dubious people to buy into a subprime mortgage thinking that 5 years later they were going to be able to afford it. Rather than thinking, well, if I can't afford it now, maybe I can afford it in 5 years. But that's a risk given, how tumultuous the economy is in general that I probably shouldn't take. It took a lot of people chasing after a lot of things in reality they didn't really need to form the sort of shape of society that we have now, the particulars of it. We can talk about capitalism versus communism. Communism failed spectacularly to collectivize the farms and to turn the factories over to the workers and to create production quotas. All of those things failed spectacularly in the Soviet Union. And perhaps, capitalism in a general sense is a better way to organize the economy, but the particular shape that capitalist economies take in America has a lot to do with what the masses are buying. The thing about the rich, the 99%, when it comes to oil or being against this product that they make or that product that they make, is that they're willing to make their money any way that they can. So for example, if everyone in America demanded solar energy, for example, and they were willing to not only demand it, but back up that demand with their dollars to start purchasing, you would see companies throwing their money at that. Instead, people are still, they would rather complain about the cost of gas, the cost of their heating bill,